What's up, everybody? My name is Ryan Thomas. You're tuning in on Friday night to this special edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm your host, coming to you live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and last but not least, Grandstand Sports Network. So excited with the progress of the show, so excited with the growth of the show each and every day. People interacting with me on Twitter, people interacting with me on Instagram, people interacting with me on Facebook, as always, and YouTube, and it's great. I love it. It's fantastic. It is just amazing. So thank you to all the people that are tuning in each and every episode, and also giving me the feedback that I have come to love and adore throughout the last almost 3 years now. So here we are, back again, live on the Thomas Take, and we got some big news outside of the sport of mixed martial arts. Jon Jones, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, is due back in court February 27th. I think it's going to be probably one of the biggest days in MMA history, where MMA fans will be holding their breath on what will the future hold for Jon Bones Jones. Jon Jones has had a lot of peaks and valleys, shall we say, in his career. Outside the octagon, inside the octagon, he's done some bad things, and he's done some amazing things. Bad things outside the octagon, good things inside the octagon. We know the story, and if you don't, the youngest UFC champion of all time, youngest UFC champion in history, the UFC, dispatching Shogun Rua back in 2011. Running through the who's who of MMA light heavyweight legends, Rampage Jackson, Rashad Evans, to name a few. Glover Teixeira, Alexander Gustafsson, Daniel Cormier, not once, but technically twice. The bout was later ruled a no contest, and that happened in this past July of 2017. A huge fight, and a fight that Jon Jones won, in dominant fashion with a finish. A fight, nonetheless, that Daniel Cormier was competing at a very high level prior to the left leg head kick landing of Jon Bones Jones. And it was a moment for me as an MMA fan where I thought to myself, wow, this is great. Jon Bones Jones is back better than ever. And I think that it'll be a moment that would most definitely be a moment that I would say is one of the best moments in MMA history, where a guy with all the chips down against him throughout that 2-year suspension, he was able to make that comeback. But then came the announcement that Jon Jones, tested positive once again, and the circumstances surrounding that were very questionable to say the least. We still don't know what it was in his system, how it got there, and it appears as if the case has somewhat turned a corner. I've heard a lot of rumors floating around that Jon Jones could very well fight again in 2018, where things can get really interesting is the fact that this was his second offense under the United States Anti-Doping Agency bylaws that state that a one-time offender gets 2 years, a two-time offender gets 4 years, a three-time offender can get up to 8 years. And there's been rumors that Jon Jones could have somewhere between 3 and 4. Lately, I've been hearing rumors that Jon Jones could very well come back in 2018 and fight again. What do I think of that? What do I think about that? Obviously, if he goes under the court of law and they find that, this was a substance that got into his system accidentally, which there's more evidence pointing to the fact that it did get in there accidentally than it got in there purposely, due to the fact that the substance was found in something that was legal. The illegal substance was found in something that was legal. And the tests, the tests themselves, the competition drug tests that Jon Jones had passed failed one before the fight, passed one after the fight. Had he taken the supplement or the substance that was found, that he was found guilty of, it is a quick passing substance. So there's a lot of, questions as to whether he did it or not. Do I think he did it? I do think he did. Do I think he should get 4 years suspension for it? No. I think that, that definitely sucks, but I think that another 2-year suspension would be A-okay with me. Got Mike Davis on here. Damn shame a fighter of his caliber screws up constantly. I would watch him if he returns. He's a great fighter regardless of all the BS surrounding the substance abuse, etc. I would say outside of the substance abuse, he's probably the best fighter of all time outside of George St. Pierre. GSP fought virtually everybody in front of him and put them down in 2 separate generations, and then moved up to middleweight and did what he did against Bisping this past November. But outside of that, John Jones would have the argument to say, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm the best ever. He's never lost, where GSP can't even say that. The only loss on the record of John Jones was a disqualification loss where he fired an illegal technique against Matt Hamill in a fight that he was winning in extremely dominant fashion. So I think that there's a lot of chatter as far as who's the best of all time in every sport. John Jones would have to remain in that conversation despite his troubles, shall I say. So I really think that if he does come back within this year, really, we as the MMA fans have to keep a close eye on Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier. That fight set up as a super fight, light heavyweight champ versus the heavyweight champ. That fight really dictates what could be next for John Jones. I think John Jones could potentially face the winner of that fight, and I'm going to tell you why. Stipe Miocic and John Jones was in the rumblings prior to John Jones's last slip-up, mix-up, and a fight with Daniel Cormier, a third trilogy fight at heavyweight, would be something that I think DC would want, and I think that's something that John Jones would want as well, being that John Jones was planning a move up to heavyweight anyway, and with the history that they have, I think that there's some fish to fry there. 0-1-1 record for Daniel Cormier, and a 1-0-1 record for John Jones. That fight would sell. That fight, regardless of the fact that he finished DC the second time, that fight would still sell. That fight would be one that people would want to watch and want to see. And the Stipe fight would be one that fans would want to watch and a fight that the fans would want to see. So I think this heavyweight fight in July would be the next opponent for John Jones, regardless, the winner would face John Jones. Maybe not, though. Would the UFC be so inclined to give Jones an immediate title shot, not even just in light heavyweight, but at heavyweight, in a new weight class? Maybe, but maybe not. The George St. Pierre situation, people look at and say, well, he was gone from the sport for 4 years, and came back. Well, George St. Pierre retired. He didn't run into a pregnant lady on the road. He didn't wrap his Bentley around a telephone pole. He hasn't done the things that John Jones has done, in competition and out of competition, to warrant, being dismayed for that title shot. And I think that John Jones should have to fight someone else before he gets another title shot. I think enough is enough in terms of that. He got an immediate title shot at light heavyweight when he came back, and he was tested positive. Whether the substance was meant to be there or not, it was still in there, and there should be some punishment for that. So all in all, I'm very excited about this. I think this is the biggest day of the year outside of a fight for the UFC. Their biggest star could potentially come back this year outside of Conor McGregor. And I think that we're going to see the winner of Miocic versus DC fight John Jones at heavyweight for the world heavyweight title. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thanks for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Thomas Takeover for instant updates on the show, live tweets, live takes, and also like the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page. I've been interacting with the listeners quite often on there, and the viewers obviously quite often on there with my Facebook Live segments. Ton of NFL draft stuff is going to be coming out within the next couple weeks, as well as MMA news. And I want to give you guys my take coming right up next on Frankie Edgar, and I'm going to hop to Facebook Live to do that. So we'll be right back.